All right, welcome in everyone. Today we're going deep, really deep into the world of Osama bin Laden.
Really gonna try to understand this guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously infamous, but we're going to try to go way beyond like the typical headlines and sound bites.
Right, past all the noise.
Exactly. And we've got this biography by Thomas R. Malkadis, Osama bin Laden, biography. Really fascinating stuff.
A lot to unpack there.
Yeah, and our mission here, I guess you could say, is to figure out, how he went from what seems like a pretty regular dude
Yeah.
to basically like the poster child for global terrorism.
It's a wild story. A lot of people think they know it, but I think there's a lot more to it than meets the eye.
I think so too, yeah. So right off the bat, I was struck by how little we actually know about his early life.
Yeah, the early stuff is tough. Biographers have really had to dig.
It's almost like he just appeared out of nowhere.
There aren't really normal sources. No school records or personal letters, anything like that.
Right. So historians are kind of stuck with interviews and accounts from much later.
Right. And those come with their own, baggage and biases.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, so let's set the stage a little bit. Saudi Arabia in the mid 20th century, what was that world like?
Man, it was changing fast.
Yeah.
Picture this crazy economic growth because of all the oil money, but at the same time, tons of inequality.
Oh, yeah.
Huge clash, too, between old school values and all this modernization happening super fast.
That's got to be a lot to grow up with.
Yeah, and right in the middle of that, you've got Bin Laden born into this crazy wealthy family.
Oh, yeah, the Bin Laden family, right?
Yeah.
Seriously rich.
Yeah, his dad was a construction tycoon, super close with the Saudi royals.
Wow.
I actually read this story about his dad praying at three of Islam's most holy places, all in one day.
No way, all three.
Yeah, Mecca, Medina, and Jerusalem. Pretty intense.
Wow, that's some serious devotion.
Right. So that kind of environment, you can start to see how it shaped Bin Laden even early on.
Yeah, it's what was he like as a young man though? Anything that hinted at what was to come?
It's funny. Most people describe him as quiet, polite, even kind of shy. Doesn't really scream, future terrorist mastermind.
It's crazy how someone like that becomes, that. So what happened? What changed things?
Well, we gotta look at what was happening in the world around him. Those Arab-Israeli wars, 48, 56, 67, really shook things up.
Yes.
A lot of resentment in the Arab world.
Yeah.
People felt like Muslim lands were under attack.
And losing Jerusalem in 67, I mean, that was huge.
Oh yeah, losing the Dome of the Rock, that's symbolic, right? It feeds into this whole narrative that Islam itself is under siege.
Yeah, it's not just land anymore. It's deeper than that.
Exactly. And then you've got the U.S. getting closer and closer with Israel.
Right, yeah.
In Bin Laden's eyes, America becomes the big bad, the one propping up all his enemies.
This is where things get really fascinating, I think, right? Because now it's not just reacting to politics. It's about how he sees the world. It's about ideology.
Totally. And one guy really had a huge influence on that, Sayyid Qutb.
Okay, so who was this Qutb?
He was this Egyptian intellectual, big player in the Muslim Brotherhood, and his writing, man, it really impacted a whole generation of Islamists.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Qutb had spent some time in the U.S., and he really hated it. He saw Western society as completely corrupt, materialistic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he actually called it jahiliyyah, which is like a state of ignorance, barbarism.
So basically the opposite of true Islam.
Exactly. And he thought Muslims had a duty to fight against that, to create societies based on Islamic law.
And this is what resonated with bin Laden.
Oh, yeah. Big time. It's like Qutb gave him a framework,
Right.
Black and white, good versus evil.
So there's no middle ground.
Not in this worldview. And it's a worldview that makes violence okay, even necessary, if you think you're fighting enemies of Islam.
And that brings us to this word that gets thrown around a lot, but often misunderstood, jihad.
Yeah, people hear holy war, but it's not that simple. In Arabic, it really just means struggle, striving for something.
So how did bin Laden twist that then?
Well, traditionally, there's like the greater jihad, which is all about internal struggle, personal growth.
Okay.
And then there's lesser jihad, which is, defending Islam when it's under attack.
So he kind of took that and ran with it.
Yeah, he mashed them together. He said fighting enemies of Islam, that was like both personal and a duty to the whole community.
Okay.
And he used quad bob to justify it.
So totally different from like mainstream Islam, which is about peace.
Exactly. And that's key because it opens the door to violence in a way that's really, really dangerous.
So we're starting to see how it all like comes together. History, ideology, this twisted view of religion. And then, boom, the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in '79 happens.
Yeah, that was huge.
That's Bin Laden's first taste of jihad in action. Right?
Absolutely. Afghanistan, it's a crucible, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's where he goes from, rich guy writing checks to a leader who's ready to fight.
And this quiet, shy guy
Turns into a major player in a global conflict.
It really is. And it's in Afghanistan, that's where we start to see the beginnings of al-Qaeda.
Yeah, it's a story that gets really dark really fast. And it makes you think about how these extremist groups, how they take root and grow.
So Afghanistan, it's this like training ground, and Bin Laden, he's moving from like writing checks to actually getting involved. But like, was he actually like fighting?
Well, there's this story. It's apparently Bin Laden. He wanted to be right there, in the action.
Yeah.
But one of the fighters, he's like, dude, you're way more valuable alive. We need you raising money.
Makes sense. Got to keep those funds coming.
Exactly, yeah. So for a while, it was all about logistics, making sure the Mujahideen had what they needed.
Practical.
Yeah, for sure. But that didn't last forever.
Right. So he did eventually get more hands-on.
He did. He formed his own like fighting unit.
Right.
And this is where you start to see his ambition.
And this is around when al-Qaeda starts to like really form, right? It wasn't just a bunch of guys with guns anymore.
No. This is something different. It's almost like a business, a corporation.
A terrorist corporation.
Yeah, but for real. They had like leadership committees, training camps,
Wow.
money flowing in, a media wing. Like they were organized.
So the Cold War's ending, and this whole other threat is rising.
Out of the ashes.
Yeah, and for Bin Laden, it wasn't over. He had a new target, the U.S.
That's right. When the U.S. put troops in Saudi Arabia for the Gulf War, man, that was it for him.
Like the final straw.
He saw it as like an invasion, desecrating holy ground.
And wasn't there like some irony there? Didn't he like offer to fight Saddam Hussein?
He did, yeah.
Yeah.
Offered his guys to the Saudis. They said no.
I bet that stung.
Oh, for sure. It just confirmed everything. Like the Saudis were puppets of the West.
And this is when he teams up with Zawahiri.
Yeah, Ayman al-Zawahiri, the Egyptian doctor turned radical. That partnership, that was huge.
So what made them like such a good, a bad pair?
They were like two sides of the same coin. Bin Laden was the face, the leader, charismatic, and Zawahiri, he was the brains, the strategist, really smart. And they both hated America big time. They both wanted global jihad.
And Zawahiri was like hardcore, even for Islamists, right?
Oh yeah, way out there. He wrote that attacking civilians was justified.
Wow.
Said the West was like all guilty, complicit in crimes against Islam.
That's taking things to a whole other level.
Yeah, really dangerous stuff. And it changed how al-Qaeda operated. They got more brutal.
So now you've got this partnership, and it leads to like a wave of attacks. The World Trade Center in '93.
98, the embassies in Kenya and Tanzania.
Yeah, it's like the world is starting to wake up to the threat.
And Bin Laden, he's public enemy number one.
Gets kicked out of Saudi Arabia.
Ends up in Sudan.
Yeah.
He found a safe haven there for a while.
Built up his network.
Refined his ideology.
And that's when he puts out those fatwas, right? Declaring war on America.
In 96 and 98, yeah. Those were big. Basically, he's saying any American anywhere is a target.
Chilling stuff.
Yeah, it's a line in the sand. He's making it clear this is war.
And then, 9/11.
It's crazy, because the idea, it probably came from Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, another al-Qaeda guy. Yeah, but Bin Laden, he's the one who okayed it, who celebrated it. So in the public eye, he's the face of 9/11.
And that's the image that's stuck. I mean, does it matter that he wasn't the mastermind?
It's complicated. On the one hand, it shows that al-Qaeda, it wasn't just him, There were other players.
Right.
But Bin Laden, he's the one who created the ideology, the justification.
Yeah.
He made it okay. More than okay. He made it like a righteous act.
And after 9/11, things change again. He's provoking the U.S., getting us into Afghanistan, Iraq.
He knew what he was doing. He was playing a long game.
Yeah.
Using terror to wear down America.
Like it was all part of some master plan.
He was a master manipulator, for sure. And he knew how to use the media, to spread his message, to get people angry.
And this is when Al-Qaeda gets, like, decentralized, right? It's not all coming from one place anymore.
Exactly. It becomes like a franchise.
Yeah.
Cells all over the place, doing their own thing, but all under the Al-Qaeda banner.
So much harder to fight, to even track.
Oh, yeah. It's like whack-a-mole.
What about WMDs, nukes, chemical weapons? Were they really trying to get those?
They wanted them bad. Back in '99, Bin Laden even said it was a religious duty, like the only way to fight the West.
That's scary.
Yeah, and it shows you how far they were willing to go.
I mean, think about the damage they could have done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even without those weapons, they were still hitting us. Bali, Madrid, London.
Always adapting, changing tactics.
They were good at that, always keeping us guessing.
So even with the U.S. fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq, Al-Qaeda is still out there. What's Bin Laden doing during all this?
Well, he's not, like, calling the shots anymore, not in the same way. He's more of a symbol, like the spiritual leader.
But still powerful.
Oh, yeah. His words, they still had an impact.
Crazy how he stayed relevant even in hiding.
He was like a ghost. but a ghost that could still inspire people to do terrible things.
It's a lot to think about. I mean, we've covered his whole life, his ideas. What's, like, the lasting impact, though? Like, what's his legacy?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to even, like, measure. Right, everything changed after 9/11.
No doubt. I mean, just look at security, airports, borders, how intelligence agencies work. It's a whole different world.
Yeah, like we're living in the world that Bin Laden created, in a way, all this fear.
It's true. And it goes beyond, taking off your shoes at the airport.
Right.
Bin Laden, he also, he helped fuel this Islamophobia, this idea that all Muslims are dangerous just because of what a few extremists did.
Yeah, and that's so messed up. It's like judging a whole religion based on a tiny, tiny group.
Exactly. It's dangerous and it's wrong.
And it's still happening. Like, people are still dealing with the consequences of that,
Yeah, unfortunately. And here's the thing, Bin Laden, he might be gone.
Killed in 2011, right?
Yeah, but his ideology, it's still out there.
Like, Al-Qaeda is not like what it used to be. Right, they're weaker. But there are, like, offshoots, affiliates, still operating all over the place. Yemen, Somalia.
So it's like a hydra. You cut off one head and two more pop up.
That's a good way to put it. And it makes you wonder, like, what is it about these extremist ideas? What makes them so attractive? Especially to young people.
It's like we saw it with Bin Laden, we saw it with ISIS. Like, what draws people in?
It's a tough question. I mean, experts have been trying to figure that out for years.
Yeah, no easy answer.
Right. But part of it's got to be that sense of belonging,
Yeah.
Like you're part of something bigger. You have a purpose.
The cause.
Right. And these groups, they offer a simple worldview, good versus evil, no shades of gray.
Makes sense. When the world feels, like, chaotic, you want those easy answers.
Exactly. And if you feel like no one's listening to you, like you don't have a voice,
Yeah.
well, a group that says we have the answers, that could be really powerful.
Especially when you feel like you've got nothing to lose.
Right. And we got to factor in the internet, social media.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
These groups,
Yeah.
they know how to use that stuff. Propaganda, targeting vulnerable people.
Preying on their fears.
Exactly. So it's complicated. It's ideology, psychology, technology, and then, all the real world problems. Poverty, lack of opportunity.
So it's like you can't just, like, bomb terrorism away.
Nope. It's a much bigger fight than that.
You got to get at the root causes, give people hope.
If you want to stop the next Bin Laden, you got to create a world where people don't feel like they need
It's
it.
a tall order, but it's got to be done.
For sure. And that's why it's so important to understand, to really dig into Bin Laden's story.
It's not just, like, history.
No, it's about understanding extremism,
Yeah.
where it comes from, what it does, how we deal with it.
So as we wrap this up, what's the big takeaway here? What do we want our listeners to remember?
Bin Laden, his story, it's not simple. It was personal, historical, ideological, all these things coming together.
It's like there's no, like, single explanation.
Right. And to really get it, you got to look past the easy answers, the black and white thinking.
There's always more to the story.
Exactly. And if this deep dive, if it got you thinking, I hope you keep digging. Look into the Muslim Brotherhood. Read Sayyid Qutb. See how Al-Qaeda's changed over time.
The more you know.
The better.
So there you have it. That was your deep dive into the world of Osama bin Laden. Hopefully you learned something new, saw things a little differently.
Yeah, always good to challenge those assumptions.
Absolutely. And as always, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep diving deep. We'll see you next time.